In this video, traders, we're going to look at confirmation bias. Stay tuned. Hey guys, a warm welcome to you. All right, so confirmation bias affects us every single day, and it can get dangerous when it comes into our trading. So let's look into kind of have an idea of what it's all about. So confirmation bias is something where we seek to reinforce our belief in something as opposed to looking at it objectively. So an example could be something like, okay, you've got a persuasion for a political candidate. Left or right, doesn't matter. Every time you see something in the news related to that candidate, you will wrap it round as positive for that candidate. So if you are, let's say you're right-leaning and you're in favor of the right-wing candidate, then anything that comes out that he says, maybe it comes across a little bit too over the top for the neutral or left-wing person, then you're going to say, well, that makes perfect sense because he wants to control this, he wants to control that. If you looked, another example would be a kind of extreme example, and again, we're not getting political here, but let's say you've got an opinion on gun control and you see in the news something that happens, there's been an unfortunate incident with guns. Now, if you are very, very anti-gun control, you're going to say, well, you know, perhaps if more people had guns, then this wouldn't happen. If you're very, very pro-gun control, you don't think people should be having guns, then maybe your bias is going to be, well, this is what happens when people get hold of guns. So you can kind of see the two flavors. And it's the same if you believe that's about a specific person or specific type of people. So if you believe a specific demographic of people is unfriendly, or specific kind of nationality is unfriendly, or is romantic, or is funny, or is this, you generally will kind of have that confirmation bias and you will seek out something to reinforce that understanding. So let's look at it in terms of trading or investment. The danger, of course, with trading and investment, you can probably kind of work it out already, is that if you are already positive about a market or an investment or a trade, when negative news comes out, you will tend to dismiss it as being irrelevant. And when positive news comes out, you will tend to use it to reinforce your position. I've been guilty of this, and you may well have been too. You've got a position on, right? Market comes out, there's some news perhaps coming out on a stock, or there's some news coming out, you see some news or you see something on social media relevant to the position you've got. If it's confirming what you're thinking in your trade direction, you will nod your head and go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's one of the reasons why I'm in the deal. That's why I'm risking my money on this trade. But if you see a story or headline or something that comes out that's just completely against it, let's say you're long and it's bearish, you'll start to think in your mind to justify why that's not true. Now, that doesn't make any sense because of this, or why that won't affect the stock price. And so the confirmation bias has clouded your judgment into not being objective enough. Whereas, let's say if you were politically neutral and you hadn't decided which candidate you were going to vote for, just like you hadn't decided your opinion on gun control, your opinion on climate control, your opinion on the investment, your opinion on whether an iPhone is better than a Samsung, for example. We can go down to the most meaningless things, whether you prefer chocolate to sweets, whatever. You get the point, right? You have made that decision. You may well then look objectively at the reviews of an iPhone. You may look objectively at the reviews of a Samsung, and you may make your decision based on that. Whereas if you are an iPhone fan, you are probably not going to look at any news that says, well, the iPhone camera is worse than the Samsung. You would say, well, it doesn't matter, I don't use the camera much, it's not very noticeable anyway. Whereas if you were a Samsung fan and you saw that on the iPhone, you go, yeah, that's why I'm using a Samsung, because I want a better camera. And you can start to see, but the objective person would go, well, if I'm making a choice on the phone based on camera alone, I'm only going to go for the better camera. And so you can see that happens with your investments and trades as well. You reinforce rather than kind of looking at it objectively all the times and going, you know what, I need to look at it objectively. I need to say what's on the bullish side and the bearish side, but legitimate information. I'm not talking about fake news or nonsense coming in and clouded noise. We're talking about legitimate information about the trade we're taking and whether or not it's relevant, and then taking it on board and adjusting our decision to suit. You know, just like the person who is leaning left and then decides to kind of lean right, they take the objectivity and they kind of say, no, it doesn't make sense that I want to do this. Or the person who's leaning right then leans left, or the person that switches candidates, or the person that has a different opinion on gun control or favourite model of car, or whatever it may be. Again, it's looking at things objectively because things change, right? Things change. It's the same with those examples, and they're quite extreme examples, I get that, but they're the same, right? The political candidate, as it goes through, if you're sitting on the fence, you might start to veer to another. It might come to light something you don't agree with, so you veer back to the other one. And so it's always a dynamic decision-making process where someone who's firmly on the right, or that candidate, won't move at all. Same with the stock, same with your investment. You are firmly in that position, whereas being objective and saying, actually, no, it doesn't look so great now, yes it does, no it doesn't, gives you far more flexibility. And whilst you don't want to be indecisive, it makes sense to being flexible, and so that you take on board the news and say, you know what, this has changed now, the situation's changed, I'm changing my opinion, it's no longer along, I'm coming out, I'm neutral, I'm no longer in favour of gun control, I'm not, or I'm no longer in favour of this, I'm not, that kind of thing, and being objective and seeing the bigger picture. So confirmation bias happens in everyday life. Have a little look when you're walking down the street. Maybe you make an assumption about someone you see, maybe you make an assumption about something you read, maybe you make an assumption about the drink you're going to taste. All these kind of things are confirmation bias, and then if you're aware of it, how it creeps into your trading, perhaps you can get a bit of a hold on it and hopefully improve your trading performance. All right guys, take care, see you in the next one, bye bye.